And it's just a community awareness event. Um, I really am committed to making a change in our community, and I hope that you guys have heard something. I have touched a spot in your heart, and that you guys will listen, because nobody wants their mother to feel the pain. No matter all the problems we have, our mothers are our rock, and we as a community have to come together and make a change. So I thank you for your time, and again, I thank you for coming. I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Renee. What I really liked about what Renee was saying is that everybody has a choice to be part of the solution. And so that's really, after the panel and after lunch, we're going to have a chance, you all are going to have a chance to sit down at your tables and talk about how you all are going to be the solution. Gregorio is going to outline that in a second, but right now we have a really crucial piece here, and that's cause. And one thing that Renee didn't talk about, well, I wanted to, was that there's some, there's some racial tensions here. You didn't mention that the perpetrator of the violence was a member of the Southeast Asian community here in Stockton. I think a lot of times in this work, we don't want to talk about race. It makes us uncomfortable, right? We don't want to put it out there. Renee, I'll just say this, last night when we were talking, you mentioned that they work together, right? Causes families from Cambodia. Renee was saying, you know what? It wasn't easy to work with cause for a while, for a long time, right?
To lift our spirits back up. A lot of our young men, where we come from, they felt abandoned. They felt hurt. They felt pain. They feel shame, right? When I first came to America, it was kind of confusing. You still had to follow your traditional ways, but then you got to learn how to accept the traditional ways, the society here. You have one foot in the ways that your mom and dad taught you, and then you got the other foot that you had to survive in the streets. And living in some parts of Stockton, South Stockton, Central Stockton. Mom and dad didn't speak a lot of English. We lived in broken down apartments. We were illiterate. My mom and dad didn't know how to read or write. So they depended on us a lot to translate for them. I remember when I was a little boy, going to the store, my dad bought some milk, a gallon of milk. I know it costed like $3, right? But my dad didn't know how to speak English, but the cashier person said he gave him 20 and then gave him no change back. So my dad thought it did cost him $20. I know sometimes growing up, I felt kind of ashamed of my parents, right? Because they didn't know how to speak English. They didn't know how to read or write English, right? And there's times where I go to sleep at night thinking that I wish I could have found like a full house sometimes, you know what I mean? Having Danny Tanner and all that, right? But I wake up and I came back to reality. Mom and dad work in the fields. Wherever there was onions, asparagus, cucumbers, they're right there working in the fields. And while my mom and dad was working, I had to make sure I had to take care of my brothers and sisters, my little siblings that looked up to me, right? But then I found out that my mom grew up with domestic violence her whole life because it was okay for my dad to hit my mom. That's where we come from, our culture. It's okay, right? And then my dad, he struggled a lot because he had to witness seeing his dad get tortured. One thing about that a lot of people don't know that we came to this country because we were a victim of genocide. We went through a civil war, and we were was wiped out. 1 point something million of our people died. My dad hadn't witnessed her mom. My dad and my grandma hadn't witnessed her dad head getting decapitated in front of her at 8 years old. My dad was shot by gun wounds with the wars. And then we come here to America, right? In 1984, 85. My mom and dad, when they first got out of the plane, they kissed the ground. They said, "Son, we're free." Looked at my brothers and sisters and said, "We're free." So you got to understand where I come from. Education is not free. You got to be rich. You got to be coming from the kings and queens to get free education. So now that we're in America, it's a K-12 education is given to us. And so my mom and dad were so happy about it. And so we moved to Stockton. When we first came to America, we came to San Francisco, and then we came here to Stockton. Worked my way and got away with it. And in the streets, you don't snitch, right? You don't go and tell on nobody, right? That's what we're taught, right? And I'm sitting next to this man right here that killed one of my friends. And I'm like, this is my chance. This is my chance. But then his mom walked in. Short, elderly lady, 5'1", gray hair, and really humble. She walks in, and then she looks at me, and she looks at him, and she gives her son a hug, and she goes, "I love you." I never heard that, And I sat down, right, and then she goes, "Do you know who I am?" She goes, "I'm your aunt." It's my aunt. It's my mama's sister, right? So I found out my cousin, I never knew, because of the other side of the neighborhood that he's from. That's sad that I don't even know my own cousins, right? And that was my aunt. And my cousin was the one that killed my boy, right? And it was kind of tough, knowing that that's my mama's sister. Well, what happened if I was to whack my cousin? How would my aunt feel, right? But my cousin died 2 months later. Somebody from my neighborhood is caught himself. He got killed. The thing is that in society, sometimes a lot of our young people, a lot of us work with a rhythm, right? And sometimes a lot of us young men, sometimes we kind of go off beat. That rhythm, that traditional teachings that a lot of our elders passed down to us, we don't have that no more. And Cambodia New Year is coming up next week. And it's on the 9th, 10th, and 11th. And we always say during every Cambodia New Year, somebody gets killed. When I was younger, it was beautiful. You go to the temple, you enjoy, you share food, you share offerings, you share teachings. It's different now. We got sheriffs, we got GTAS, gang task, we got CHP, we got all law enforcement in our temple. And then they're waiting for documented gang members, they're waiting for people that are on parole to come in. And it doesn't even seem like a place of celebration, it seems like a place where sometimes it's like a prison yard. Right? Everybody's all segregated in groups, and this is at my temple. But imagine our public school, what it looks like, right? Have you ever had a chance to take a look at our public schools? Or some of you young kids that go to our public school, everything is segregated in groups, right? Every one of you guys are every different groups. You got the Bloods, you got the Crips, you got the Northerners, you got the Southerners, you got the Skaters, you got the Geeks. Well, it might be some of you guys as future bosses, all in different groups. They're all in different groups, right? And then you got your campus supervisors that are waiting for something to pop off, right? Am I right or wrong? And when you walk into a prison yard, what do you see? The same thing. Sometimes education is so important, but a lot of times in our public schools, they don't teach us that traditional teachings that a lot of our young men go through. The traditional teachings that our grandma taught us. The traditional teachings that our grandfather taught us. And we forgot that. And with my culture, we forgot that. We lost that. We came from respectful family. We come from warriors that fought to protect our community. But then the sad thing is we went through one little civil war that wiped out all the teachers, the doctors, the lawyers. All of them was gone. They were all killed. If you were smarter than the government at that time, you will literally get killed. So there was no doctors, no medicine man, no teachers, nothing. We were all wiped out. And the ones that came to America was uneducated. Because there was none of that where we come from. So sometimes that rhythm is not there. And we're a little bit offbeat. Then when we come to a society that we feel like, wow, sometimes it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I live in a neighborhood that got indicted in 2007 by our governor now, who is Jerry Brown, but at one point he was our attorney general, right? He indicted my neighborhood. He took 50 of us young men and locked us up or gave us strikes. And some of us are in, and some of them they didn't do nothing. Just because of the neighborhood they're from, they were part of that group. And they got indicted. And it seems like, I feel upset sometimes at myself. Because there's a reason why. How many of you guys are 90s babies? Raise your hands. I apologize. Like he says, that us as an 80s babies did not pass on that right teachings to you guys sometimes. And you guys got to understand who's looking up to the 90s babies now. And they're 13 years old. They look up to every one of you guys. You guys are so precious to our community. We need more young warriors to help us out. But then sometimes I understand that rhythm that we work with is not there. It's kind of offbeat. But sometimes we need to get back in rhythm. And to get back in rhythm, you got to know where your roots come from. You got to know who you are. You got to know what did my ancestors sacrifice so I could be here. What did they do so I could be here? How many marches did Reverend Martin Luther King march so we could vote? So we can have the power to speak, the power to let our voice know that this ain't right. Living in a community full of hate ain't right. A lot of our young people don't need this, I know. But sometimes, man, I'm going to tell you, in today's society, why is it so hard to love, and why is it so easy to hate? There's a lot of humans, but there's not a lot of humanities. Where are the humanities at? And I always say this, that we don't have a kid problem. And I brought this up yesterday, right? In our community, we have an adult problem. Before we even tell young kids to get along, we need to let us adults need to learn how to get along. And I'm sorry sometimes that an adult lets you down. Because when an adult lets a young man down, sometimes they kind of go the other way, right? Because they don't trust us adults no more. That's why sometimes when the cops come into our community, we don't trust them fools. They don't look like us sometimes, right? But other than that, guys, before I leave, before I end up, it's a great honor to be in front of a lot of young men. It's a great honor to be in front of teachers. And one thing I want to let you guys know that when I first met Sandy Nunez, I didn't already know how to read. He helped me wrote my first speech. He was the first man that told me he loves me. He goes, I love you, bro. And I said, damn, man, I ain't never heard that from another man. What's going on with you, bro? How you doing? But then, that's my teacher. Before I leave, I didn't went to a Buddhist monk to teach me my cultures, to tell me about my culture sometimes. Sammy brought that in me. Because you need to know who you are, Mio. If you know who you are, then you know what you represent and what your purpose in life is.